Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here with Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and you guys know what time it is. It's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community, and one of my subscribers has awared me that the other day, and it got covered by Dave Palumbo, so I'll link it down below, that some pro bodybuilder named Antoine Valente, I think I got it right, and I actually went and watched the interview, so I watched it. You guys can check it out on Dave's channel too if you want. I watched it even though bodybuilding's not my thing. And he tore his bicep. And the ironic part is that he didn't tear his bicep while actually lifting. He tore it between sets while moving an object in the gym, a piece of metal. So let me put on my +5 hat of speechcraft, lovingly called my +5 hat of autism by many of you, and let's talk about this. And here's the thing, guys. I'm going to give bodybuilders a hard time, but I'm also going to point out that this is the reason bodybuilders have to train oftentimes the way that they do if they did not have a serious athletic or strength background before they became a bodybuilder. And that's the important distinction we need to draw here. So, I mean, I'll make fun of some of these guys the way they train, like Dexter Jackson the other day, but it works for him because bodybuilders cannot actually train for the most part. Again, a bodybuilder who started as a bodybuilder went straight into the whole enhanced bodybuilding thing, they can't actually train. And what occasionally happens is that you'll see bodybuilders and they're always getting hurt, right? Calvin Von Mosier is a perfect example, kept getting hurt. Every time these guys do anything that doesn't involve pumping on a machine, they injure themselves because bodybuilders get this idea in their head that they don't understand the effects the different drugs and things have on their body. And they actually get the idea in their head because they're big and they're carrying a lot of muscle and that their muscles are capable of producing a lot of force because a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle, right? That's study after study after study has confirmed that for decades. The bigger a muscle gets, the stronger that muscle gets every single time. Every single time. Drugs don't make it quite as strong as just straight training does, but it still makes it stronger. It's just disproportionate. They're capable of generating a lot of force, and so therefore they think that they're able-bodied people or that they're in shape. And the reality is most pro bodybuilders, again, unless they really built a tremendous base before they touched a single drug, are extremely fragile. They are the equivalent of geriatric men in their own way. They're basically like 70-year-old men who just happen to have a lot of muscles that magically appeared on their body. That's the best way to think of them. They're not able-bodied. They're not in shape. They're not athletes. And when they try to do physical things, they oftentimes get hurt, and they get hurt really bad. And I mean, people will say, well, what about Ronnie Coleman? I mean, but it's like, well, number one, Ronnie Coleman played high school football. He was an athlete already. Number two, he actually had admitted in an interview before he even started steroids, he could squat and deadlift over 700 pounds. And he was also did compete in powerlifting and other stuff. He did different sports and then went into bodybuilding and was a genetic freak. He still destroyed his body. He's still in a wheelchair as a result of the crippling his body. So let that sink in. He was successful up to a point. He could do a hell of a lot more than these other guys could do without getting hurt, but it eventually still crippled him. Why? The way the drugs operate in the body, and particularly when these guys get close to shows, people are always like, man, why do they always get hurt when they're really close to these bodybuilding shows? Well, some of this should be common sense. Some of the drugs they use weaken your tendons, right? I covered that the other day too when I talked about Brandon Harding. Crashing your E2 levels, your estrogen. If your estrogen levels go too low as a man, for any reason, like if you're a guy who's not even on anabolics, you're on nothing, and you take something to lower your estrogen, and you had a normal healthy estrogen, and you drop your estrogen down to below the healthy range for a healthy man, you know there are negative effects in your body, right? I mean, yeah, we know it can give you depression, it'll give you erectile dysfunction, all that stuff, because you actually need estrogen to get a hard on as a man. You need a small amount of it. Right? You have to have that. You can't get an erection without it. I mean, you could take Viagra or something instead. So, I mean, there's problems, but one of them that's not necessarily a health or mental side effect of that is things like connective tissue. You can get reduced bone density. You can lose bone minerals as a result of it, right? It can also cause things like osteoarthritis, but it can also create a situation to where your tendons, where they attach to the bone, because the bone demineralization can get weaker, and too much force, if your estrogen's been too low for a while, and you've lost bone density and you have a really strong muscle, guess what? And most bodybuilders have really strong biceps, right? Because they do tons and tons of bicep pump work. The biceps get big. They're on tons of drugs. Their biceps are big. Most bodybuilders have disproportionately big biceps compared to a lot of other muscles in their body even, right? This is obvious. If you just lifted weights, your biceps would not be proportionately the size that they are to their bodies oftentimes. They're slightly disproportionate. That's a very strong muscle for most of them. Well, it rips off easy because of that, because the bone is weaker, because they've used drugs that have caused their bone density to sometimes go down. They have a really strong muscle there, and some of the drugs that they really prefer pre-contest that are very, very popular have been documented in the scientific literature to weaken the cross bridges in your tendons. See where we're going with this? So if you've got a really strong muscle, just from the drugs making it bigger, you have weakened connective tissue, and you have weakened points in the bone where the connective tissue attaches. It's just real easy to rip stuff off the bone. And as they're getting pre-contest, they have what? They've had their estrogen levels really low for an extended period of time. They've added drugs to their stack that can cause weakened cross bridges in their tendons for an extended period of time. They're fragile. They're fragile like an 80-year-old man is at that point. They're like Mr. Glass, right? Think you guys know the comic book character Mr. Glass? They're Mr. Glass at that point. Most of them are. Oftentimes, and it's because of the drugs. But they've got really strong muscles, so they're just capable of ripping themselves apart. Because they're frail outside of the muscles. The muscles are the only thing that's not frail on their body. Everything else is. Everything else is falling apart. But they think they're able-bodied, and they grab a hold of something and picked up a piece of metal over because they were going to deadlift. He picked up a piece of metal and it ripped his bicep off completely off the bone. He's got to have it surgically reattached. That's what bodybuilders are. They're not. People need to remember. Let's step back. Professional bodybuilders are not athletes. They are not in shape. They're not healthy. They're not fit. They are Mr. Glass, who has an extra 100 pounds of muscle just magically implanted on his body. And it is magically implanted. It's the drug. How they train doesn't affect it that much. It actually only matters a very little bit. So, I mean, in all honesty, the things that I tell you guys never to do because it's silly, if a pro bodybuilder, and this would never happen, this is a hypothetical, this would never happen in a million years. No pro bodybuilder would ever pay me to coach him. If one did, and he would offer me a large sum of money, and he says, oh, I'm on XYZ, and gives me his whole drug stack of everything he's on, how should I train? How do you think I'd have him train? I don't want him to get hurt. My only goal with him is to give him a pump without him getting hurt. I would not have him train. Like any real training program would rip that guy's body apart. They can't actually train, like in the traditional sense of training. I would tell that guy to come in, and I want him to do nothing but hammer strength machines, including his curls. I don't want him touching a weight. I don't want him ever doing a full range of motion exercise. People say, but Jason, you tell everyone full range of motion produces more growth. That is correct. And people not on drugs, longer ranges of motion usually have more hypertrophic potential. So skipping the lockout on your bench will cause less muscle growth. Not touching the chest will cause less muscle growth, right? You need the full range of motion to stimulate growth when you don't have outside substances causing automatic magical growth on its own, right? The drugs make you grow even if you don't train. You want to know what helps muscles grow even faster on drugs, especially the amounts these guys use? Metabolic fatigue. That's all that matters. You don't have to lift heavy. You don't need to worry about intensity. You don't need to worry about progressive overload. Just get a pump. Get as big of a pump as you can and make the muscle get swollen up and get all these metabolites accumulated. 20 rep sets are fine. Don't do full range of motion because that might actually work the tendons and things, and you don't want to risk, ripping a tendon off. Right? Don't do anything that's not totally stabilized in a fixed range of motion. Don't do anything that you can't do for at least 20 reps. So, I mean, yeah, you might be able to do the whole hammer strength machine with all the plates added on the sides for 20 reps, but that's what I would have them do. They only need metabolic fatigue. The drugs will do everything else. Just get a pump. Right? They don't need to lift anything. They're just going to hurt themselves. Right? They're just going to hurt themselves. They're going to tear tendons and stuff off. Just get a big pump, do a bunch of volume, a bunch of lightweight with a pump. Don't get hurt. Don't accidentally do full range of motion on anything, my guy, because you'll be like Jerry Ward and just tear everything in your body. So that's already what's happening to him. He's not even as big as these guys. all his years of drug abuse and other stuff, Jerry rips lats trying to do machine-assisted pull-downs. He can't squat because he'll rip his quads. Can't squat to depth, even with one plate aside. He tried to bench and couldn't even touch his chest before he broke both pecs. Right? You can't train. Once you've done this and didn't start as a real athlete and build a massive connective tissue base first before you went into bodybuilding, if you didn't do that, they can't do that stuff. They can't train. They just need to come in and get a pump with some lightweight 20 rep sets, because lightweight's relative. 30 rep sets. Do 20 sets for every muscle group on a machine. Don't ever do anything athletic off of that machine. Don't touch anything. Don't pick anything up heavier than your gym bag or a milk jug. Right? They always tell women, what was her name? Tracy Anderson told women, don't pick up anything heavier than 3 pounds. Right? The same would apply to these bodybuilders. Outside of the machine, don't you pick up anything heavier than 3 pounds. Maybe get you an assistant to load your plates on, and do nothing but low intensity cardio to help you burn fat. Right? The drugs do everything else for them. That's all they need. And picking anything up other than in a machine is just going to rip your body apart. If you're not careful, because that's exactly what happened to you. You're not athletic. You're not able-bodied. You're just a pumped-up lab experiment. You can't pick stuff up. You can't do that. So that would be my advice. That's actually literally what I would have them do. Why wouldn't you? And you sure as hell can't have them train unless they already had a training base before they did the whole bodybuilding gig. You can't do that to them. These are not able-bodied athletes. They're frail-ass Mr. Glass. That's what they are. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.